We decided that today the focus should be on UK. We're really in a war in this country. And as I've said before, in my opinion, that is a war against our own politicians. But let's hear what Nigel Farage had to say on the subject of Keir Starmer and immigration.
So Starmer's going to get tough. We're going to treat the trafficking gangs as if they are terrorists. We're going to take the lead in Europe. Goodness me, I've heard that before. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to sign back up to Europol, not Interpol, no, Europol, the EU's own police force. And we will take our share of asylum seekers crossing the Mediterranean, coming in to the European Union. We'll be signing up for the EU refugee programme, something we weren't even in as members of the European Union. And given that yesterday 6,800 people landed in Lampedusa, Italy alone, I suspect the number, even if the boat stopped, the numbers coming would be even bigger than now. We're going back into EU programmes. He won't solve a thing.
Well, totally agree with him. It won't solve the thing. But what would be nice is if Nigel Farage would get into the real detail as what's happening, because the illegal immigration is a tiny fraction of the overall migration, and that migration is planned policy throughout the European Union. Indeed, it's a globalist policy, as we've highlighted several times before. But Nigel's certainly right to be warning about Starmer getting involved with Europol, because this is dragging us deeper into the EU. And we can be sure that if Europol is being engaged in matters to do with immigration, Europol will be engaged in matters to do with terrorism. And as most people in the UK now understand, Starmer is prepared to label anybody who gets out of hand or challenges his policies, his government, as a terrorist. So this is very dangerous times. But let's just jump back a little bit and see what Keir Starmer was saying while he was still in the position of shadow leader.
Would Labour be prepared to negotiate with the 27 EU nations on an asylum seeker burden sharing scheme so that Britain does its bit within the wider international context?
I think it's important to distinguish between the arrangements within the EU for EU members, which we're not part of and we won't be part of, and sitting outside that, a returns agreement of some sort. Now, everybody knows we need a returns agreement. The Prime Minister himself has acknowledged that we need a returns agreement, and that would have to be negotiated. We're in opposition, we're not in a position to negotiate that, and that's not what I've been talking about today. But I accept that that's a discussion that needs to take place. The Prime Minister knows that's a discussion that needs to take place, but the terms of that would have to be negotiated as we went along. But it wouldn't be as if we were a member of the EU, because we're not a member of the EU.
So I'd just like to ask the audience, is this man just confused? He doesn't really understand what he said previously, or is he actually lying? It's so difficult to tell. We're not part of, but what is he absolutely doing? He's burrowing his way back into the European Union as fast as possible. So let's have a look at him in action here.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced €99 million in funding to tackle illegal migration. Starmer said to stop illegal migration, we must also tackle it at source. The money will fund projects across Africa and the Middle East and includes humanitarian and health support and access to education. Starmer was speaking to the leaders of 45 countries at the European Political Community Summit in Oxfordshire.
So there we are, an EU political summit brought into Oxfordshire and Keir Starmer deep into it. What has happened? Well, the EU is still wrapped around us, and Keir Starmer is going to make sure that those chains are pulled even tighter around people in UK. Let's look at just some of the headlines as legacy media did actually pick up at least some of the things going on here, because whilst headline in the first one is the terrorist gang, this is about the chats with Europol, supposedly on immigration, but is it really? And then we can see we've got Sky News talking about sights on a closer relationship with Europe. Keir Starmer aims to repair European bridges that the Tories have burnt. Keir Starmer plots deal to take EU migrants from the Telegraph. And UK's Starmer hails European unity on Ukraine, tackling migration. And of course, many people coming out of Ukraine into Europe and indeed onto UK. Well, what did the UK column have to say about Brexit back in 2018?
That they want a veto over future trade deals signed by the UK. So in other words, if the UK signs a trade deal with a country that the EU has a trade deal with, the EU is suggesting that they want the power to veto some aspects of those trade deals that Britain might do with other countries.
Yeah, it's Brexit without the exit, I think we're looking at.
I think that's absolutely it.
So I think we're allowed to say the UK column absolutely on the button back then. We saw it for what it was. We called it out for what it was. It was not Brexit with an exit. There was no exit in what was done. And Keir Starmer, of course, knows this, and he's going to continue to lock us even deeper into EU controls. Now, have a look at what he's doing to the UK public. This is a Telegraph reporter's article here. You'll be refused bail even if you only watch riots from the sideline. Judge warns whether an active participant or curious observer, anybody involved in disorder will be locked up. Now, that was told a Belfast court, but let's just have a look at this clip at an event, a simple event, but very telling, this side of the water.
We've got to stand up against this. We've got to come together and stand up against this.
Guys, watch the papers tomorrow or today.
I don't know, it's Wesley Winters.
What the media will say about this. But look, all on camera.
He's been doing a mega job.
Against British people. After documenting the whole event and standing in the same spot for about 10 more minutes, the police then decided to do this.
He's been covering all the behind the scenes stuff of this, and look at this.
Disorder, mate. What are you doing arresting me?
Arresting for a public disorder for filming.
Well, there you have it, public disorder for filming, and it's only going to get worse under Keir Starmer. Free speech is being destroyed. Just a little clip here from Margaret Thatcher talking on the subject of immigration. I'm going to talk over it for people who are just listening into the news, but let's play it. So she's saying those who are genuine refugees, and that's determined by the United Nations, will not be returned. Those that are legal migrants will be returned, and it is customary international law for countries to receive their own immigrants back into their country. And if he, the right honourable gentleman, is suggesting that we ever get to a position when you cannot return illegal immigrants to their country of origin, then he is proposing international chaos. And that, of course, is what it is, calculated chaos. So, Ben, good point to bring you in, because we're clearly under attack by our own government. And the key tactic at the moment is anybody who dares to speak out or challenge Starmer's government is a far right-wing extremist. What's your thoughts?
We're all far right now. That was a great opening segment, Brian. Thank you.